Boker Tov. This is the Daf Yomi for Shabbos Kodesh, and we're going to start on Kuf Vav Amud Beis. The Daf Yomi is Kuf Zayin for Shabbos. We're going to start on Kuf Vav Amud Beis, approximately 15 lines from the bottom. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Chia bar Abba says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Hatoin Tanas Ganaf Be'aveda. So somebody, by a lost object, claims that this lost object that he found, he claims it was stolen. And so therefore, Rabbi Yochanan says, Mishalim Tashlumi Kefil. Just like if he had a pikadon, a deposit that he claims he was stolen, he pays double. So too, if it was a lost object and that he claims it was stolen, and then he was lying, he pays double. My time, what's the reason? Because it says in the pasuk, "I'll call Davar Pasha," for everything that you had something wrong with. I'll assure Chamor, I'll sell Sama, I'll call Aveda for every lost object. Asher Yomar Kiyuzeh, that he says that this is it. Ad Elohim Yavod Dvar Shneim. So I'll call Aveda Asher Yomar. So it means to say for every lost object, he has to pay double for everything. It says in the end, Yishalim Shnaim L'Reyehu. So we see from here that just like Toin Tanas Gan, if he pays double, so too for an Aveda. So Eisvei Rabbi Abba bar Mamo Rabbi Chia bar Abba, he challenges it. It says in the pasuk, Ki yitain ish, when a man will give something to his friend to watch, and then it says Ki yitain ish. And what does the Brisa say? When a man will give something to watch, which means Ein nesinas katan klum, that if a minor gives something, it doesn't count. Rashi says Ein nesinas katan klum because it says ish. This comes to exclude a minor. The Ein nishba'in altanas nesina, so that if a minor makes a claim to an adult, the adult does not have to take an oath as a result of the minor's deposit, and therefore, if he claims it was stolen, he cannot come to have to pay the double penalty because there's no kafel if the minor makes a claim. So kitain ish ein nesinas katan klum ve'eli ela kishenasnu kishu katan v'tavo kishu katan. I only know that if the minor makes a claim that he doesn't get to collect the double, if he makes the claim when he's a minor, if he gives it to him when he was a minor, and he makes the claim when he's a minor, then we could say that this ish, that's what it's referring to. I might have thought kitain means when he's now a man, and when the claim, I might have thought that. But I only know, back to the text of the Gemara, I only know Shenasuk Shukatan Vitavuk Shukatan. How do I know Nasuk Shukatan? How do I know that if he gives it to him when he's a minor, Vitavo Kashu Gadol, and he makes the claim when he's an adult, how do I know that he's also exempt from the having to pay the kefal? Tamal Omar, Ada Elohim Yavod Dvar Shnehem. It's to tell us that until the Nesina and the Tviyah, the giving and the time he makes the claim, come at the same time. Meaning to say, tell us that both of them, we need him to be an adult. Vim Isa, and if you are correct that for an Aveda, that he makes the false claim that it was stolen by an Aveda, that he has to pay double, to have a Namik Aveda, we should have the claim of the minor be like a lost object. Because just by, Rashi explains, just by like a lost object, there is no actual giving, and so therefore he makes a claim and he can make a claim to make it take an oath and to require him to pay double. And if he makes the claim when he's an adult, he is obligated to take the oath and also to pay double, even though there's no giving. So too by the minor, even though there's no giving, if he makes the claim when he's an adult, he should have to pay double. So the Gemara says, no, here what we're talking about, this case is Kigon Sha'achoshu Katan, that we're not talking about a case where it's in existence as an adult, but we're talking about a case where the minor consumed it while he was a minor. And so therefore, it doesn't exist when he's an adult. So the Gemara says, well, Aval So therefore, as Rashi explains, that the deposit never entered the Torah's ta'ina me'olam. It never was in under the rubric of being able to make a claim while it's an adult. But if he lost it, from the second he lost it, there was a bilan, there was an ownership over it to make the claim. So the Gemara says, do you mean to say, says the Gemara, Aval Kishu Gadol Mai. So let's say it's in existence while he's an adult and he makes the claim, Hachinami de Mishayim. Do you mean to say that the person would pay double, that the person would pay double for the claim of a pikadon that he gave to him as a child, but he's making the claim for as an adult if it's in existence? If that's the case, that which the Brisa says, that should take Nesino Tvia Shavin Ke'echad until both the giving and the claiming come at the same time. Listening, it could just say, not the giving and the claiming, but just the consumption and the claim have to come at the same time. Gemara says, okay, you're right. He changed the text to read it that way. Rav Ashi gives a different answer. Rav Ashi says, Lo dami aveda ka'asya mikoach ben das. V'halo asya mikoach ben das. So Rav Ashi gives a different answer. Rav Ashi says the two cases are not the same, because a lost object you can say that the person can make a claim for, because the person who lost it, he was of sound mind, but the minor, he was not an adult, and so therefore that's a distinction between the two cases. And indeed, somebody makes a claim that something was stolen by a deposit. He's not going to be responsible to pay the double, and he's not responsible to take an oath until he denies part of it and he admits to part of it. That's when he has to take the oath. My time. What's the reason? The Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Ki huzeh. Because as we said in the first pasuk that we cite on today's Daf Yomi, Sheyomar Ki huzeh, which Rashi means, Hainu hodo b'miktzas. That means to say that he's partially admitting. He says, I admit to this, but not to this. The Amar Bar Yosef, and this argues, this position, Rabbi Yochanan says that this principle of Kofer b'pikadon, that you deny the pikadon, you don't have to take an oath unless it's a case of a partial admission. This is an argument actually with Rabbi Bar Yosef, because as we say on the top of 107a, Amar Rabbi Bar Yosef, Eruv Parshios Kasuv Khan, that even though this verse, which is written by the case of the Toin Tanas Ganaf, even though this verse is written by the case of somebody who makes, even though this verse is written by the case of a pikadon and he claims that it was stolen, it's Eruv Parshios Kasuv Khan, meaning to say it really is a verse that was written from another parsha and it got mixed up here. It's in the wrong place. That this concept of kiyuzeh, this moda b'mixas, actually, this partial admission actually refers to a case where you lend somebody money, and that's where it's supposed to be written. Because in this passage of the Pikadon, even where it's not a partial admission, the person is liable to take an oath. When it says this verse of kiyuzeh, it's not referring to the case of the Pikadon. What's it referring to? It's really referring to the case of a person who lends money. That's where we say that the law of that you only take an oath if it's a partial admission. And the Gemara says, why do we need, by a case of a loan, why by a case of a loan do we say that you only take an oath if you partially deny it and partially admit the loan? That follows the logic of Rabbah. Why, if a person admits to a partial loan, he admits to a partial claim, does he have to take an oath? Chazaka, we have a presumption status, that because a person will not actually come to be so arrogant as to deny what another person has claimed from him. And Rashi explains, a person will not be so arrogant to deny a claim of a person who did a favor for him. And so therefore, if he denies everything, he's going to be exempt from an oath. Because if he wasn't absolutely certain, he wouldn't have totally denied it. But where he does a partial admission, really he wants to deny everything. But the reason why he doesn't do it is because he's not so chutzpah, because this guy did him a favor and lent him the money. And that's how Rabbah explains it. He really wants to deny everything. The reason why he's not denying it is mishum de'in adam meis panav, because the person isn't so chutzpahdik, isn't so obnoxious as to completely deny what somebody else gave him. So v'kua ba'ida delay. So really he wants to admit everything. The reason why he does a partial admission is savar imo dinoe bekue tavoe bekue. If he'll admit to everything, the guy will want everything. So therefore, ishtamili miyahashta. Therefore, he's going to basically push him off for now. Ad avui zuzi until he gets money uparane, and then he'll be able to pay it. Hilkach rama rachmana shvuei. So therefore, the Torah places an oath on this person who does a partial admission by a loan. So therefore, he'll come to admit everything. This logic only applies to a loan of a gabe pikadon, but by a deposit, well, if I didn't do him a favor, you're just watching his deposit. The person will be disrespectful and he'll lie. And so therefore, even if he denies everything, according to Rav Bar Yosef, he'll still have to take the oath. So Tani Rami Bar Kamma, so Rami Bar Kamma taught Arba Shomrin. There are these four Shomrin, and we know who the four Shomrin are. The four Shomrin are person who watches for free, the Shomer Chinam, person who's paid, the Shomer Sachar, the Shoel, the borrower, and the Socher, the renter. These four people are watching a deposit. In order for them to take an oath, they need to have a partial admission. And if they swore without it, Rashi says, without this partial admission, then their oath doesn't count for anything, and therefore they're not going to be responsible to pay the kafel payment. And so therefore, this is the position of Rami Bar Kamma, that they require that. And that argues with Rabbi Bar Yosef, who says that the shvuas of the Shomrim by a Pikadon does not require a mode of a mixus in order to take an oath. And these are the four ones, the Elohein, Shomer Chinam. These are the four the Shomrim, the Shomer Chinam, Hashol Nosi Sachar VaSochar. So the Gemara says, my time of the Rami Bar Kamma, what's the reasoning of Rami Bar Kamma? That the Shomrim need to have a partial admission in order to require them to take an oath, because this pasuk of Kiyuzeh is actually written specifically by these verses. It's actually written specifically by the verse of the Shomer. And so therefore, for that reason, we're going to say it wasn't written by the pasuk of, as we said, it was Erev Parchis, but it wasn't written by the pasuk of the loan. It was written by the pasuk of the Shomrim, because it's written exactly by the Shomer Chinam. And so therefore, that's the reason why we say, that's the reason why we say it. So the Gemara says, hold on one second. Okay. And so that's how we know that by a Shomer Chinam, that you only take the oath if it's a case of a partial admission. And Shomer Sachar, how do we know that if it's a case of a hired worker? How do we know that you have to do also an oath only if it's a partial admission? Yalaf Nesina Mishomer Chinam. We compare from the fact that it says the word Nesina both by a Shomer Chinam, by an unpaid watchman, and by a Shomer Sachar. And a Shoel, how do we know the idea of a borrower, that he also only takes an oath if it's a partial admission? It says V'chi Yishal. Says v'chi, the letter vav, mosif al inyan rishon. It adds on to the first concept to tell us that he also has to take an oath only if it's a partial admission. And the socher, and how do we know in the case of the renter? Well, if you want to say, according to the position that we saw earlier, that there's a dispute, is the shomer sachar, is the socher like a shomer sachar? Well, hainu shomer sachar, he's the paid watchman. And according to the one who says like an unpaid watchman, hainu shomer chinam. So that's the position of Rami Bar Kamma that says that he only takes an oath if it's a partial admission. By the Shomer, Bar Yosef, that the person who takes, he makes a claim that it was stolen and he was watching the deposit, he's not going to be responsible to do an oath. He's not going to be responsible to pay double from this false, from until he's not responsible to pay kefil unless he puts his hand on it, meaning say unless he misappropriates it. Rashi says this is prior to the oath, like where he had, before he swears it was stolen, he actually did steal it. He misappropriated for his own use. My timer, because it's based upon the fact that the pasuk says, "V'nikra balabayis al el ha'elohim," and the person comes who owns it and he brings him to the court, and he says, "Im lo shalach yado b'mlachas re'eu," brings it to the court and says he did not stick his hand on his friend. Miklal the shalach bayad. We see from here that if he had misappropriated mechayev, he would be responsible. And this teaches us that when do we say you'd have to take an oath where you claim it was stolen? Only where you actually have misused it. So Amar Lahu, Reb Chia bar Abba. So Reb Chia bar Abba says, Hachi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Reb Chia bar Abba said, under these circumstances, Reb Chia bar Abba says as follows: Hachi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. They said to Rabbi Yochanan the following: no, that what did Rabbi Yochanan say? That when does the shomer, when is he responsible to pay the double? Ba'omedis alavusa shanu, meaning to say where the animal is standing on his trough, meaning to say even if he didn't misappropriate it, even if he didn't actually use it, but it was standing in his property, he's still going to have to pay double, or he's just lying. Then he would still have to pay double. And Amalei Rabbi Zera Barabba Dafka Bomedes al Avusa Kamar. So he says it's not just that he's giving this an additional opinion; it's specifically this additional opinion. Aval Shalach Bayad. But if he had actually misappropriated it, then kana. Then he would have acquired it. So he's saying, is it specifically we're standing on the trough? But if he had actually misappropriated it, then it's his, and the oath doesn't matter at all. Or maybe even if it's standing on the avusa, on the trough. Rashi says as follows: do we say Aval Shalach Bayad Kodem Shvua, prior to the oath, he acquired it bitoras gezela. Prior to the oath, he had acquired it, and therefore shomer chinam eino nasa ganav, the person who is a free unpaid watchman, does not become a thief unless he claimed it was stolen. And this one, prior to it having been stolen, acquired it, and it's in his possession, and he'd have to pay. And so therefore, when he's denying it, he's denying what he owes. He owes the guy money for taking it, but at that point, it's already his. Or is he saying, even if it's standing on its trough, that he's responsible? And for sure, if he actually stole it. So Amrway, Zulo Shamati. So he responded, this I did not hear. So that's why it has to say, before he says to them, and here it says, Rabbi Chia bar Abba responds, Zulo Shamati. So when Rabbi Zera says this to Rabbi Chia bar Abba responds, I actually didn't hear this. But Kayotze ba Shamati, but I heard something similar. To Amar Rabbi Yasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Hatoin Tanas Avid. Let's say this person claims it was lost, Vinishba, and then he takes an oath. V'chazar v'tan tanas ganef, and after he claimed it was lost, he swore, and then he comes back and he claims it was stolen. V'nishba, and he takes an oath. Ubao edim, and then the witnesses come. Potter. Then under those circumstances, he doesn't have to pay double, meaning to say he claimed it was lost, took an oath, and then he came back and claimed it was stolen. Then he does not. Then he's exempt. My time. He doesn't pay the double amount. Why? Because, like we said from Rav earlier, that once you take the first oath and you claim it was yours, you've acquired it. So therefore, since once he's acquired it and then he denies it by saying it was stolen, he's acquired it. And Rashi says, like Rav Shesha said. We said earlier, and one who denies the pikadon, he immediately becomes like a robber, even without an oath. And for sure, in a case where he took an oath for sure that since it's in his possession, it's his at that point. And this is the position. So Amrle, no. Low. No, the reason why he doesn't pay, no. There, it's not because it's in his possession. That's not the reason why he's acquired and he doesn't pay double. The reason is because since he fulfilled his obligation with the first oath, therefore the court is done. And therefore the second oath is not an oath of the court. And so therefore he doesn't pay double. Because once he took the oath, therefore he's really not responsible to take another oath. So Amar Rav Sheshes, now Rav Sheshes comes along and says, Hatoin Tanas Ganav Bepigadon, that if somebody comes along and claims, and excuse me, Imar Nami Amar Rabbi Avin, Amar Rabbi Eloi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Hatoin Tanas Gana, Hatoin Tanas Genev, Toin Tanas Avedav Bepigadon, Venishba because of Hatoin Tanas Geneva, Venishba Badu, and in Potter, he's going to be exempt. Their whole V'yatsi Dei Bao and Mishlo Rishonas. So now comes along Rav Sheshes, and Rav Sheshes says, Hatoin Tanas Ganav Bepigadon, somebody claims it was stolen by deposit, Kivin Sheshalch Bo Yad, Potter. Once he had misappropriated beforehand, he's going to be exempt. My time, because the Torah is saying that you didn't yet misappropriate. Potter. This is a crazy position, and that's what we're being told. But don't we say that you make this person? Don't we say that we make the shomer take 3 oaths, an oath that I was not negligent, an oath that I did not misappropriate, and and the oath that it's no longer my possession. And isn't it the case, my love, isn't the oath that I did not misappropriate similar to the oath that it's not in possession? Just like the oath that it's not in my possession, if it will become known that it was in my possession when he took the oath, he's chayev. When it becomes known that he, in fact, did have in his possession, did misappropriate his life. And it says, and I didn't misappropriate, similar to the idea that I wasn't negligent. If it becomes clear that he was negligent, he's exempt from paying double because he didn't steal it. He was negligent. Will be exempt from paying the double penalty. Okay, so now we're going to stop here. This is a beautiful daf for Shabbos, and obviously we'll go over it on Shabbos Kodesh. Everybody should have an amazing Shabbos and enjoy.